mic's not working still?
It's kind of sort of loading.
Oh.
Good evening. I open this Building Board of Appeals regular meeting of September 20th, 2023 at 6:34 p.m. And clerk, could we please have a roll call?
Chair Eby,
Here.
Vice Chair Hubbard, Board Member Barrere, Board Member Honey, Board Member Mansky,
Present.
Board Member Smith. Chair, we have quorum.
Okay, fantastic. And if you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. And moving on to the approval of the agenda for this evening, are there any changes to this evening's agenda? Okay, if not, then that is considered approved. And now the minutes to be approved. Could I please have a motion and a second for the minutes to be approved?
I move to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Is the board working? We'll just do a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If you approve the minutes, thumbs up. Thank you. The vote is 3-0. The motion carries.
All right, now we're going to have public comment. And if you wish to address the board under public comment, please sign in on the public speaker form before the call to order for this meeting. Public comment is an opportunity to express opinions regarding issues that are not a part of public hearings on tonight's agenda. A separate opportunity will be provided for comment for any public hearing. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. The board is authorized under the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, is not authorized under the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at this meeting on any issue raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. And we don't have anyone that signed in the public comment form. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Okay. So we have no public comment this evening, and we will move on to the general business. And the purpose of tonight's general business is for the Building Board of Appeals Resolution 01-2023, recommending adoption of the 2023 National Electrical Code. And I believe that we are going to have a presentation by staff at this time.
Yeah, and I'll be brief in terms of the presentation. So Reed Betzing, I'm the city attorney. I'm appearing tonight to guide you all through this thing. I will tell you, just for the record, that John Schumacher left the city, and so he's no longer our chief building official. So in his stead and in his place right now, we have Steve Salg, who is the interim chief building official. And we'll be working on recruitment for a chief building official starting Friday, I think is when an application will be going out. So I'm not sure what John is doing, but I'm pretty sure he's probably having fun knowing him. So we obviously wish him good luck in his future endeavors. So tonight we're recommending the adoption of the 2023 National Electrical Code. This adoption, this is one of the few codes which is pretty rote in terms of the adoption process. The NEC comes out with new versions of their code every 3 years, much like our other building codes. And you'll recall back in last year, this board went about going through and recommending approval of the ICC codes. So the state adopts the National Electrical Code, and as pursuant to statute, what it requires is that all local jurisdictions have to follow suit within 12 months from that adoption. So I believe the state adopted the 2023 National Electrical Code on August 1st, and so the clock is kind of ticking for us to go ahead and follow suit. Not being an electrician, at least a professional electrician, but I can replace a light and a ceiling fan from time to time. You know, there weren't a ton of major changes between 2020 and 2023. I will say from a trades perspective, there are relatively significant changes as it relates to kind of the expansion of GFCI outlets. So if one were wondering, you know, what has kind of changed from 2020 to 2023, and I'm looking at Steve to start saying, no, you're completely wrong, it would be the expansion of the use of those. So, you know, previously, I think we're all pretty much familiar. You know, GFCI was required kind of near those locations where there was going to be water being used, and that has expanded to the point where basically anything happening within a kitchen, you have to have GFCI, and that actually includes microwaves are going to have to be plugged into GFCI, as well as ovens and those range tops. And so you'll see probably from a lot of new builds coming in, GFCIs all over the place. I know that there were some corrections made to the 2020 NEC as it related to outlets that were required to be placed on some of those larger kitchen islands. If you hit over a certain amount of square footage, whether or not it was going to be electrified or not, they would require you to put in an outlet. And not a lot of folks necessarily always thought that they were going to have an outlet through there, so the requirement that there be one placed was kind of silly. So there were some refinements to that language and those requirements. Other than that, Stephen, unless you have some other thing just to note for the record in terms of major changes, I didn't particularly note anything of super important.
Yeah, it was mostly the GFCI outlets in residential applications. Some additional other minor things where they changed the location of the definitions within the code book. They went from a Division 0 into a Division 1. There is now the requirement for safety covers on some electrical outlets within childcare buildings, as well as motels and dormitories. And there is a clearance requirement around electrical equipment cabinets that swing open into egress routes.
Yeah, and I think there was, going back to the GFCI, there were some requirements around multifamily and having the GFCI within multifamily units. But other than that, you know, no huge major changes that wouldn't be anticipated by builders and electricians working within the city of Littleton. So what we do with all of our codes, all of our building codes, is we bring them before the Building Board of Appeals to kind of talk through some of those major changes and get consent from you all to bring forward a resolution to our city council recommending adoption or recommending certain amendments. The recommendation for you tonight carries with it no amendments, and that's pretty typical for a national electrical code. We don't want to be sideways from what the state is doing. I would say if there were amendments to the NEC, it would probably relate to kind of more specific, more stringent, kind of jurisdiction-specific type things. But that's not something that we anticipate or have anticipated in the past. It's not something that we've made amendments to this particular code. And that would be pretty standard across the state, really. No one really takes any exceptions to what the state adopts in terms of the NEC and is passed through as printed, if you will. And that would conclude our brief kind of overview of this process tonight. and the recommendation to adopt the NEC as is. And I'm happy to make up answers to any questions that you have, or defer to Steve, who's much more of an expert in this.
Sure, thanks, Reed and Steve. Do any board members have questions for the staff?
Yeah, I do. In the case of residential construction, are there any conflicts between the IRC that was adopted last year, the 2021 IRC, and the 2023 NEC? And if so, which would govern in residential construction?
That's a good question. The 2021 International Residential Code, toward the back of it, contains an electrical section, which is basically duplicating what is written within the National Electrical Code. To my knowledge, there are no conflicts, but with these small minor changes that have occurred in the 2023 update to the NEC, I would need to see if and how the ICC is adopting those same changes.
Would those, would it be the policy to use the more stringent, or to use, just go with NEC, like for basically all construction, whether residential, commercial, et cetera?
I would propose that would be a discussion in-house with legal and whatnot.
Yeah, I would say typically what we've done in enforcing any of our codes that may be in conflict with each other is to choose the more stringent.
I think general comment would be clarifying that on the building department's website when people are applying for permits or trying to figure out what they're be held to, if you will.
Yeah, one of the processes that the building department has is we have on file, or we should keep on file, kind of interpretations such as that are made kind of internally in terms of, it's called kind of an administrative interpretation. When you have certain questions where the language is not necessarily clear, or in terms of governing procedure and policy as it relates to that interpretation. So that's certainly something that we can address.
Any other questions for the staff? Well, and Stephen, congratulations on moving into the interim position. Could you give us just a little bit of a summary of your background? We'd really
Sure,
appreciate
and
that.
Thank you. So my background is I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, and I worked the first part of my career in heavy civil and spent the last, I want to say, 17 years before coming here as a director at a zoo, overseeing design and construction there, and have been with City of Littleton in the plans examiner position for almost 3 years.
Great, so you're familiar with the department, and again, thanks for filling in. All right, if there's not any more questions at this time, I'll call for a motion and a second to approve the resolution.
I move to approve BBOA Resolution 01-2023, recommending adoption of the 2023 National Electrical Code.
And board members, do we have any discussion on this motion?
Again, I just, not that it's part of the motion or any amendments, just I feel like it's always helpful if the city's pretty clear about, in cases where there's two codes, for contractor were to go look on your website, what are they truly beholden to if there's, 2021 adopted and a 2023 NEC? But I don't feel that that needs an amendment or stipulation in the motion.
Okay, great. Any other comments? All right, then we'll call for a vote at this time.
Looks like the board is working, so we'll use that. about another thumbs up, thumbs down?
That's always
Thumbs up to
easiest.
approve, thumbs down to, thank you, 3-0, the motion carries.
All right, and we do not have let me see here. There's no public hearing this evening. Is there any other comments or business this evening from the staff?
I would just say that as we go through that process and identifying who the next chief building official is, perhaps we'll find an opportunity in the upcoming future to find a business matter that will involve the board and provide an opportunity to give proper introductions, so, but nothing else.
All right, we'd appreciate that. Any other comments or reports from the board? All right, then we will adjourn, and I adjourn this meeting at 6:49 PM.